Jim Browdy. Politics, opinions, insight. Now, this is Newsnight with Jim Browdy.
If things are going better in Iraq, why won't Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice promise to get troops home? We'll get to that question, but first let's go to the video of the day. Saddam Hussein quibbling with the judge over stating his name on day one of his trial.
We now want details of your identity only, your name, and then you will have your time to speak. Your conduct is that of a judge. I want your identity details. You know me. If you are an Iraqi and you sound Iraqi, and the others know that I don't get tired.
Okay, enough of that. Let's get an assessment of where things are headed in Iraq. I'm joined by Barbara Bodine. She served on Jay Garner's team in Baghdad. She's a former ambassador to Yemen and runs the Middle Eastern Governance Initiative at Harvard. Farouk El-Baz, a regular here, is director of the Center for Remote Sensing at Boston University and a frequent visitor to the Middle East. Welcome to both of you. Barbara, let me start with you. Assuming the constitutional vote is ultimately certified, there's some issues. What is that? What are the implications for Iraq and Iraqis?
I think that it will be certified. I don't think there's any question how the vote came out. I'm not entirely sure that it's going to be the tipping point that the administration would like people to think.
Why not?
The Sunnis basically voted against it, and even if the Kurds and the Shia did, you have the 30% of the people who sit in the middle of the country rejecting the Constitution because they fear it's going to destroy their country. So the Constitution wasn't a healing process at all. It may have actually underscored the divisions.
What do you feel about that, Farouk El-Baz?
I agree, although I put a little more blame on the Sunnis that they have at the very beginning when they said we're going to vote on a constitution, we're going to have a committee to write the constitution. The Sunnis backed off, and therefore they lost. And
well, ultimately there were accommodations, though, made to the Sunnis when they amended without a vote the draft constitution to allow for easier amendment down the line, but that still didn't attract votes,
They
correct?
did not, and therefore the Sunnis really cut their own throat, and it's a bad thing for them, and it's now a bad thing for all of Iraq, and that's a bad thing for the world. So
bad thing meaning you buy the notion. There was a Sunni leader who had an op-ed in the New York Times a couple of days ago saying, if anything, this will fuel the insurgency rather than calm it. Do you buy that notion?
Absolutely, because this will antagonize a lot many more people, and therefore there will be more insurgents and more anti-government positioning in Iraq.
Barbara, you and Farouk seem to be in the same place, but what's the alternative? Assuming we can't rewrite history, which we obviously can't,
right.
Where in October of 2005, where else could the United States and the Iraqi leadership have gone?
I think the major concession that was made was the one that you mentioned, that the Constitution can be opened up for amendment starting shortly after the new parliament comes in after December. That was a major concession. It was too late to get to the Sunnis so they would know about it and change their vote, but in terms of process. The next best thing that the Iraqis can do, and we can support, is a very large Sunni turnout in the parliamentary election. They did make a big mistake the first time around. Many of them know it. The next best hope, and maybe the last best hope, is going to be the December elections.
Well, there's something in between. This vote has not yet been certified, and I'll get back to Barbara in a second. Everybody has learned in the last few weeks, if we didn't know before, if 2/3 of the voters in 3 of the 18 provinces said no, the thing goes down. There were no votes in 2 provinces, yet in Nineveh there's this whole question about odd voting returns. Do you think this leads to anything?
No, it does not lead to anything at all. The fact that there are these regions where there is not very much voting that says that the Sunnis backed out. They did not want to vote.
But the numbers went up dramatically in Nineveh. Some people are saying, though, oddly, the numbers went up with Sunnis, yet the yes votes went up at the same time, which seems an odd combination of factors. But you also think this election challenge is absolutely meaningless.
I think it's meaningless.
Okay, let's talk to another. I have to say, as someone with not quite the experience either of you have, you've met with Saddam Hussein. We've talked about that in the past. It seems to me that seeing that man sitting in the dock in a courtroom today, even though the trial didn't really proceed, we saw a piece, may in some ways have more significance to the Iraqi people than any constitution, than any parliamentary election. Is that an overstatement on my part? Why are you smiling at me?
No,
like that,
I'm
Farouk?
smiling because it is certainly very important, not just for Iraq. It's very important for the whole Middle East and the regimes around the region.
In a positive way, it's
In
important?
a positive way, it's important. Let these people feel that, well, you are president now, but doesn't mean that you'll be on top of the heap all for the rest of your life, because things can change. So that's a very important statement.
See, that's the sense that I get, Barbara, that essentially when you're sitting home, even if you're an Iraqi, whether you're Sunni, Shia, Kurd, and you have some doubts about the constitutional process, you say the man that ran everything is sitting there in this incredibly subservient position. That makes a powerful statement, doesn't it?
In a box, not in a box.
In a box, exactly. Does it not?
In a box. It makes a very, very powerful statement, and I think you're right. It probably makes a more powerful statement to some of the leaders in the region. It does give them some idea that the past can be behind them. It doesn't necessarily answer the future. I think the trials, and I think it will be trials of Saddam, because this is just the first of many, have the potential of serving as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
A la South Africa.
Right, that this will get all of the stories and the emotion and the anger out on the table and almost be a catharsis for the Iraqis, the way the constitutional process wasn't.
Well, because you talked originally about the Sunnis and the Sunni reaction to being excluded from the process, and then when they were invited in, they didn't participate. I assume most Sunnis, and I know one can't generalize, but I have to generalize for shortness of time reasons, I assume the Sunnis are not quite as thrilled seeing him sitting in that box, as you say.
That's true. Actually, they are not thrilled. And in Iraq, when you talk to the Iraqis themselves, like the colleagues of mine who are Shia, they would say, well, it is irrelevant. Well, the whole thing is irrelevant. He's gone.
What does that mean?
For them, the guy is gone. So what is it that you're talking about? It's his trial and his this and whatever it is.
But wait a second, you don't think people in the back of their heads, despite all the rhetoric, say, I know he's coming back. I know that there's going to be some circuitous route that gets. You don't think there's that fear in the hearts and minds of the Iraqi people?
No.
They believe he's gone.
Not
He's
even
gone.
the Sunnis, yeah.
He's
Not
gone.
even the
That's
Sunnis,
even the
yeah.
Sunnis.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I agree. Even the Sunnis don't think he's coming back and probably don't really want him back. Power, yes. Him, no.
Speaking of coming back, American troops, it goes back and forth. We have General Casey one day saying in the spring we'll start dramatic withdrawals. The next day he says, I didn't mean that. We hear we're doing great. We're armed. The Iraqi battalions are ready for battle. Then we hear the next day that we're down from 3 to 1 that are ready to fight on their own. Assuming this trial proceeds, assuming the Constitution is ratified, Sunni problems and all, what's that mean for the status of 140,000 men and women from this country in Iraq?
I think the most important is not necessarily the training of the Iraqi troops. That's important, but that isn't going to end the insurgency. The insurgency is a political problem. It's going to end when the Iraqis think they have a legitimate government. When that actually takes hold, when they can look at the parliament, look at the process, and say, certainly compared to what we had the last 30 years, this is an Iraqi government, this is ours. That's going to take the political wind out of the sails, and that's what's going to start bringing the insurgency under control.
But wait a second, let's put political wind in this country for a second, Barbara.
Right,
You're talking
okay.
about the insurgency being the, to use your expression before, the tipping point, the status
Right.
of that insurgency. Well, there are elections 13 months from now, and they're not just Democrats that are upset. There are a lot of Republicans
Right.
saying to the President of the United States,
Yeah.
we need a plan to get out of there. So you don't think these two events we're talking about are the trigger that begin to cause this administration to declare a partial victory and start pulling people back home?
I think, yeah, they could. We're very good at declaring victory and going home, and I think there is a lot of political pressure here to do it. I just don't think we should fool ourselves that we're doing it on an Iraqi timeline, we're doing it on our timeline.
You're shaking your head.
I'm shaking my head because I don't really think that the administration can do that and without having the troops pulled out from the cities first. If you leave the cities today, the whole damn thing will collapse. It will be a total disaster. And the whole war effort would collapse completely. The United States of America will have no face worldwide. So it will be a total disaster. So
But Farouk, when you see polls, and I understand polls not only in this country are unpredictable and undependable, but obviously in a country like Iraq they are.
Yeah.
Every poll I've seen in the last year, 80 to 90% of Iraqis say the United States should withdraw right away, even if it means that civil war will follow. Isn't there some argument to be made that maybe it's time for Iraqis to deal with their own internal nightmares rather than having us deal with them on their behalf?
That's correct.
But that's not what you're arguing.
No, I'm saying that the army, the American army, should have absolutely no presence in urban areas. Leave the cities completely, go into the desert. But you're there to say that I'm going to keep this situation and in control for a few months, and everybody to see whether everybody can be taken care of.
You're a diplomat, not politician, but politics plays a huge part in this, does it not?
Oh,
I mean, back home, I'm not
absolutely.
talking about what's going on there.
No, here, absolutely. It's
So
all
forget
just-
what's right and wrong. What's real in terms of, you've lived through wars, you've served in that part of the world.
right.
And obviously you served in Baghdad as well.
Yeah.
What is real in terms of how much the American people and the American government can stand there?
I think we're coming up on an interesting domestic tipping point, if you want to overuse that term.
And we will.
And we'll beat it to death. We're getting close to 2,000 American casualties, deaths. And it's going to be interesting if that is something that really has people focus. I thought it was going to be 1,000, and we went past 1,000, nobody even batted an eye. I do think that we will probably come up with a timeline where we are going to, for our own domestic reasons, start bringing troops home. It may be just drawing down, taking people out of the cities, but I think this administration, for domestic reasons, is going to have to show soldiers coming home, kids, weeping wives, all that kind of stuff. We have accomplished our task. We're coming home.
Are domestic reasons, is that a euphemism for elections? Is that what
Yes.
that means? Those are the...
Absolutely.
Let's talk
Absolutely.
one more second about the Saddam thing. Obviously, everybody knows that Bush's poll numbers are atrocious, the lowest they've been. And it's not just Katrina. Many people believe it's because of disenchantment with the war, worry about when and if the troops come home. If this trial, I know it's been put off for 40 days or whatever, if this trial proceeds and the American people are a pretty compassionate sort, get to hear stories about what this man did to people who are just like us, except maybe their skin color is a little different, maybe their ethnic background's a little different, doesn't that have huge potential to once again engage the people, us, who theoretically apparently have become disengaged from this conflict? Doesn't that make it much more real for us?
It would, except for the fact that we're engaged with by default. I mean, it's the question is, what would it do outside of the U.S.? Because everybody knows that Saddam Hussein was a tyrant.
You mean in that part of the world?
And in Europe and in Russia, everybody knew that this guy was a terrible tyrant, and he was doing this and this and this and this and that. So this is nothing new to them. In the United States of America, we've already been talking about that. We have already said that. So it is nothing new. So the fact that there will be a trial and we will show Saddam Hussein for the tyrant he is not going to make a bit of difference.
Fair enough. This is our tipping point. Thank you so
Okay.
much. She's
Thank
Barbara
you.
Boudin. He's Farouk El-Baz. I thank you both for being here.